Hi, welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. In this podcast, we dive into compassionate leadership in today's fast-paced business environment. Whether our experience and insights will help you lead with heart while securing your career. Join us for engaging conversations and practical advice to elevate your leadership skills and make a real difference. I'm your host, Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader, alongside Chris O'Leary, a Fortune 100 IT leader. Today, we're discussing how to be a humane leader in a new company. Hey, Chris, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, but you're doing fantastic because you got a new job.
Indeed, I am. I'm pretty excited and happy and content. So, what can I say? You can see it in my face.
Absolutely. I'm very proud of you and doing that. And the fact that you're going to be thinking about some of those early steps of being a humane leader, which, in a new company, you've got to approach it as, look, there's probably people there that have been there longer than you. I know you're starting at a startup, but this will apply to any new leadership role when you're joining a new company. So, what are some of the early things you're thinking about doing as a humane leader in this new job and new company that you joined?
Yeah, actually, yes. It is a company who has been alive for a few months. But yes, indeed. I think the first thing is, um, as in any company, is first of all, is to learn rather than to talk, to learn, to ask as many questions, to see what is the culture surrounding this company, to see how you could fit, and maybe later on try to do some suggestions towards making this company better. And I met first of all in the cultural basis, in the cultural side of this, because yes, any new company is different. There are some companies, as you know, there are huge companies that have strict processes. They have a strict culture that you cannot maybe change or add some things. But in a startup, it's kind of different, because you bring the best of what you have learned in previous companies and talk with other leaders to see if these changes to make this company better, as I mentioned in the cultural side.
Absolutely. You very early on as you're getting that culture and making contacts, especially since you're starting at a new company. And while I've never started at a new company per se, I was always moving around within the same huge organization. When you moved departments or moved subdivisions of the business, it was like starting a brand new job from scratch because all new people, all new direct reports, slightly different culture. Even though it was the same company, slightly different culture, different technologies, things like that. So I would definitely want to try and split my time in my networking and being very human by how much time do I spend with my direct reports and their direct reports, depending on the size or hierarchy, but also networking with all your peers that you're going to have to interact with. So, very early when I would start a new role, I would always try to, well, where are most of the people located? We were a global company. So, where are my financial peers located? Where's the accounting peers? Where are my technology peers in this new role? And I would try and travel to there so I could meet with them, get to know them. Usually my direct reports were spread all over the country, so it was really hard to like physically go visit them. So a lot of it was virtual even back 15 years ago, believe it or not. We were a very virtual company because we were global. But I tried to balance my probably about 15 to 20, maybe as much as 25% with my peers, people senior to me, and more like 75% with my direct reports and their direct reports to start building that foundational relationship. And one of the things I really like that you said is listen as much as you can because you're going to have to hear everybody's kind of opinion on what's worked, what didn't work, what do we need to change, because they want to express to you as much as you want to learn. They want to be a part of your career, and they want to be a part of the change and success of the company. They may have some really good ideas that you'll catch very early on in this new period, because you won't be a new leader there for very long, right? You don't get to wear that badge of being new that long. So you really got to capitalize on listening and hearing their ideas. Not all of them will be great. Some of them may be completely wrong, but it really will help you gain a lot of knowledge on what's been tried before, what did work, what didn't work, what's not working right now, what kinds of things do we need to improve on to improve the odds of success.
Nice. Yes. I like what you mentioned. One thing that I have to maybe add is, yes, you didn't jump from another company to another one, but what I understood was that you first were at UOP, I think it was the company, and Honeywell bought this company.
Correct.
So actually it was two companies. The first one, UOP, and go to Honeywell. I have some comments that I want to do, but before that, did you have I don't know, did you have a bridge towards going from UOP to that culture in at Honeywell, or was it the same, or
Yeah,
because
it was
that's a new company?
yeah, it was a huge culture change and shift. For example, in the IT space, UOP was almost all insourced, meaning employees did all aspects of everything: IT, accounting, HR, payroll, finance, you name it. Honeywell, on the other hand, outsources many things, and not just in IT, but in IT, it's highly outsourced. But they even outsource things in HR and finance also. So first is that whole kind of cultural shift of, am I going to fit in? Because I, spent the first 15, 20 years of my career being all in-house, and spend the next 15 years where it's primarily outsourced. And one of the things that our CIO did at the time was he did his very best to get as many of the IT people together at our headquarters to meet over a week, because we were a pretty significant acquisition to this subdivision of the company. Like, we doubled the size when they acquired UOP. So by getting there and getting to meet people and kind of taking us a little bit out of the work environment a bit, because we did a lot of the team building exercises, which in general I'm not a big fan of. What I am a big fan of is go out to dinner where you can talk in a more relaxed manner. But it really helped kind of break down some of the communication barriers, start to make alliances and understand who am I gonna ally with to work on our network or work on our storage situations and so on. And one of the things I learned years later, so we were acquired by Honeywell. Well, we were all panicked we were going to get laid off, and many people did, but 100% of us, I would say, were concerned we were going to be laid off. Surprisingly, the people from Honeywell had heard about us, and because we did all of our own IT and were very educated, very hands-on, we were considered a threat to them because they felt we were not smarter would be the wrong word, but more experienced. And they were afraid they were all going to get laid off and replaced by us. So being a humane leader sometimes is about listening and understanding that there can be two opposing fears in the culture that if you're not aware of, relationships might be difficult to form because both sides are afraid that the other one's going to replace them. If you're going to, so on. So, we had to spend a lot of time building up relationships, getting to know each other. And I think, it probably took a good 6 months to a year to really understand how the UOP culture was going to need to change and some of Honeywell's culture would change, not much, but some. And people had to make decisions on whether this is a leadership um, pathway that they were, willing to work under. And some people left voluntarily. Some people did get laid off. Some of the Honeywell people actually decided to go too because they just didn't like how the UOP influence was changing some of the culture. So I think my point being, be open to the fact that as you're starting a new job, there, even though you're enthusiastic, people might actually fear your leadership for some reason that you just can't imagine. Why would you be afraid? At that time, if you asked me back then that if some Honeywell person was going to be afraid because I joined the company, I would have said, they're the parent, they got all the power. But some of my peers were concerned that I was going to replace all of them.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, well, as always, change is something really not bad, but it is like a big punch for many people because they cannot manage well change. But
Right.
actually, change is among our lives all the time. I was thinking about when you talking about this. I was thinking maybe of this. People might fear change, um, and with this, with the European and the Honeywell situation, uh, you might see it like this. Let's say that maybe there is two parents which are divorced and each one has kids, and she and him made and decided to either live together or marry. The people, the kids are the like the ones at European Honeywell or any company who is going to buy another one. I have rights. I have this privilege. When my dad is going to meet this lady, is this going to change or not? I think people might see it like that, and people might see that they're going to be afraid of all the new changes and challenges within. But I think if you open your mind, well, regarding a UP, Honeywell, or any company, like in this scenario, if you open your mind and you talk with your leaders and you have communication, it will ease the transition rather than say, no, I don't want to talk. I like the things that were as it used to be before. No, you have to experiment this change in order for you to have a smoother transition, no?
Yeah, and to grow. And I think if we
So,
can, as humane leaders, right, if we can encourage, and it's challenging for people, but you need to encourage them to communicate and discuss some of those concerns. Maybe fear, maybe calling it fear is the wrong word because maybe there's a negative connotation to that. But to embrace the change is important. And they actually did do change training, about how some of the different emotions you're going to go through on the change is bad or the change is scary or the change is going to make it worse, and be open and honest about that. Sometimes the change of you coming in as a new leader might make things slightly worse for a while because we're going to try some new things that we're not practiced at, we're not rehearsed at doing this new methodology. But once we learn it and embrace it, and then we're all aligned doing it, things might go much smoother. So is that new, humane leader in your role, how many different areas do you need to kind of start to build that network with? How many people? I mean, I don't know how big your company is.
no, actually, the company is less than 15 people, 15 persons. So it's a small startup. But that's the beauty of that, because rather than saying, "Oh, there's a huge company and I won't know anyone," you actually do rapport with anyone. So you try to first understand what they are doing, how they are doing, what are the challenges. Because one thing it is that right now, when you get into a new company, let's say a small one, such as a startup, people will see you, oh my God, this guy has arrived, this person has arrived. He's going to bring the solution that I require, that I need, because I don't know, because I do a lot of manual processes, I require to do this automatically, you know.
Yep.
Uh, or they begin throwing me many questions. Roberto, how could we do this? Do you have a suggestion to achieve this? And and that's also when rather than being too cocky, about all this knowledge that I have and that I possess. No, it is to bring an answer that is coherent and that it fits this company, this problem, that something that is that they might have not seen it before. I think that is one of the things. So yes, indeed, you have to either no, not either. You have to listen 2, 3, or 4x rather than talk. But when you talk, when someone asks you something, rather than saying 2, 3, 4x, no, try to be concise, try to be focused on this pain point and solve it uh, robust as possible. So,
Yeah, I think what I took out of that, if to kind of sum it up, and I think we've talked about this in other podcasts, is I used to answer the phone, hey, it's Chris, how can I help?
yeah,
You're doing exactly what I'm thinking of, which is you're meeting with these people, and it's not that what are they going to do for you? It's how can I help them be more successful? And I think as the humane leader, if that's your primary goal in building the relationships that whether it's finance or other people in IT or HR or the CEO, how can I help? What's
yeah,
happening in their work life and their career that at the company there's a challenge. That's why they hired you. Solve problems, solve the challenges. If
yeah,
you can go in and do 4 times the amount of listening compared to talking, and with the attitude of a humane leader, how can I help? That's the very humane aspect of it, right? How can I help? Hearing that, getting their answers, and hopefully don't overpromise, because that's the other thing is don't go in there, how can I help? And I'll solve that tomorrow. And
no, 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 no,
no,
no, no,
no, no,
no.
no. But offering that help is a huge door opener to letting people, you know, tell you their real problems at work.
Yes, actually, you mentioned willingness, and indeed, willingness is the proper word to set the foundation, but not providing or not giving false promises. Yes, I will solve it in 2 days. No, you have a lot of job, but actually, I think also a really important thing about being a humane leader is that you don't tell false promises, you don't tell lies. And you mentioned, okay, you wanted this in 1 week time. We cannot do it with our team. We had to either acquire services or maybe outsource something. It is nothing, maybe not time, it is the scope or maybe budget or quality. It depends on the situation. You will say what to do. But if you try, I think that one of the big mistakes of getting into a new company, it is to say I can do anything, because I'm the Superman of this. No, no, you cannot. You have some boundaries that are within your knowledge, but if they're in your knowledge, find out, seek out solutions, devise, and talk with your internal customers to find out. It is, if it's not about your knowledge, if it's about your budget, if it's about the structure in the department that you're in, try maybe to expand what you have in your team maybe to fix this, but don't. I think don't give false promises, because with that it will crumble all the trust that has been in working with you and other people among the company.
I completely agree with you, because many of the solutions that we had at UOP, as an example, wouldn't work for Honeywell, not because technically they didn't work, technically they worked, but because of their culture or their policies or their budget restrictions or et cetera, that solution that worked perfectly well, in situation A just won't work for situation B. And your key thing is, don't make false promises, because I'll tell you, it takes 10 times as long to rebuild that trust, especially when you're new. If you'd been there 15 years like I have, you can make some mistakes and you get a little more leeway, as you go forward. But you're 1 week in, you better not make any false promises.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And one thing that I think it's important to mention is, from when you were in UOP and you went to Honeywell, there were big companies. And when I went from another startup to another one, there are small companies. But what happens when you go from a startup to a big company, or the opposite, from a big company to a startup? You must not think about how were you doing in the previous company, because it has something different. Either you mentioned the budget, the structure, the hierarchy. Right now, I have a direct report to my CEO, but maybe you didn't have it. There were, I don't know how many levels above you. So rather than doing or maybe thinking what you had before, it is what you have right now. What are the boundaries? What is the scope? How much can I move? Do I have to do it? Do I do or I won't? So I think it's really important for so you to have a strong, solid foot on the floor, and to know what to do, rather than maybe living on a cloud thinking about what you used to have. I don't know if I'm making
Yeah,
myself
yeah,
clear.
and again, I think the key aspect there is, not all solutions work everywhere. So as you're being this humane leader and you're trying to be open and listening to everybody, just realize that you can be, like you said, you're not going to be right all the time, but what was right before may not be right for the situation you're in. So be open to the fact that, well, someone's explaining the challenge that they're facing, whether it's your direct report or it's your peer in another department. Listen to it and say, well, in my past, because it's always good with a relationship to share some of the things you did in your past, but say, I don't know that I can solve that yet, but let me research it. And what you can commit to is, when I will get back to you and follow up. I'll tell you, as a leader, as a humane leader, whether it's a direct report or somebody above you, make a commitment to follow up. I will get back to you in 3 days with some information. I don't know it'll be a solution. I don't know if it's what we'll try, but in 3 days after working on it some period, I will follow up with you. And if you can commit to those kinds of things, people start to respect and say, Roberto said in 3 days he's going to look into this database issue and get back to me. I didn't promise I'm going to fix it in 3 days. Promised I'm going to investigate, do this, and get back. And you get back to him and say, yes, I found out that we're using an older version of Oracle, something or other, but the upgrade is going to cost this much. So I'm going to need to research the costs of maybe an upgrade or something like that. But you've now gotten back to them and you've fulfilled a commitment. Every incremental commitment you fulfill is another building block to that relationship. So making the commitment and making sure you hit it. Don't overpromise. Don't necessarily underpromise, but make commitments and fulfill them. And people will start to respect that this is somebody who's going to follow up with me. I can work with them. They're dependable. They're here to help. And I think, you'll really cement those relationships much more quickly with both peers, your direct reports, your senior leaders, etc.
Yeah, actually, that is a pretty nice suggestion, and I will totally agree with that. I haven't seen it, but I will apply it. And if I may, I could add something. If you say you're going to have this answer in 3 days' time, use a formal communication tool. You know, send it to email, because right now I get bumped all the time with all this, and I assume you and any people around the world will, there is a lot of text communication, WhatsApp, Messenger, Slack, of everything. But maybe to know, I will say, you'll have this in your email, and stick with that. Do not do it through WhatsApp or Slack, because it will diminish maybe the message. But if you do it, people will expect it on the email.
Yeah, yeah. I'm personally, I know I'm old school, but email is my preferred choice. You can search the threads easier. You can find what was committed to. So following up and saying, as per our discussion, I'll follow up. In a big company, email is critical to document the promises. I will follow up in 2 weeks with either a solution or the cost or what our next steps will be. And in that 2 weeks, you usually replied to that message saying, per our previous discussion, here's what I've found out. This is what it might cost. Here's 3 different options, but I would propose that we do option 1. And by having that thread of emails, it's a more tangible commitment. Because you're right, of the things that we would text and Skype and in Teams, boy, even though you could keep the long thread of that, people rarely ever go back and look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. So maybe with this phrase, we could do the wrap up.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. We hope our insights help you become a smarter and more strategic leader. Apply today's lessons to see the positive impact on your team and career. Catch all our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and YouTube. Join us next week as we discuss something trendy in the leadership world. Until then, stay humane and stay successful. Bye bye, Chris.
Talk to you later, Roberto.